Okay, I'm pretty sure we're live now. Or I am live, should I say. Bit of a random one. It's decided to schedule this a little bit late, to be fair. And I was meant to do it yesterday, but everything's gone wrong again. This week's just... everything seems to go wrong. Me and Pink tried to fix another toilet that went wrong. I know this isn't Wargame related, but another toilet has decided to leak. So me and Pink tried to fix it. And me being absolutely useless, was pretty impressed when I managed to change the seal on it. So I was like, yeah, go me. And then we decided to do the next bit, which was the valve, and that didn't fit. So, well, it did fit. It was all sorted. However, there was still leaks going everywhere. So in order to save money from the plumber, we did it ourselves, and we ended up calling a plumber anyway, or I did, because Pink was more than happy to continue to keep trying to fix it, but I had visions of more flooding going through the house. So I left it. And today... well, last night I got loads of stuff done, actually. I say loads of stuff. I've been painting up these bestigors. See if these show up. No, they won't show up. You can vaguely see a little difference. There's some of these which are like a bestigor flesh colour, which is like an orangey skin tone. And then there's these other ones with a bugman's glow. And then I've got at least 6 different skin tones. I've decided to mix it up quite a bit because not everybody is the same skin colour, and I imagine in a fantasy world full of beastmen and things there'd be a bit more of a mix. So I'm going to try and put a bit of variety in this army for this tournament in March. So that's what I have been doing. I don't know how many people are actually in the chat, not many. There's only 13 of you, but all 13 of you, or 12 of you, are extremely important. So we'll go through who is here. We've got Patrick at the top. Welcome, Patrick. Phil as well, saying yo. Did you sort your green screen? Oh, for Patrick. I was going to say I haven't. As you can see, it's a normal messy background. All is Dust. Welcome, All is Dust. Slippy Tiger. Got my books, got my dice, got my cards, got my models, and GW got all my money. I imagine that's in reference to all of the death stuff that's just been released. Andrew Facey as well, welcome. Buying GF. What is GF? What is that in reference to? I'm not sure. Phil is back. Slippy Tiger. Dunny Woods. Neil Malden, welcome Neil Malden. Phil's heading off, we'll catch the show later. See you later, Phil. Graham saying PTFT tape. Maybe that would have been something we needed. In the end, it was a silicon seal on the inside of the cistern and a flexi pipe instead of a normal one, so that it wasn't at an angle. Apparently that was the problem, that it was at an angle and it was leaking everywhere. Are those Zangors? These are not. These are bestigors, and they are called bestigors because they are the best gores. So there are 3 different types. They're away at the minute. I've got this box here. There we go. And that's got 30 more gores and 20 ungores inside of it. We've got my chariot, which is this one here. Now, it's a chaos chariot. It's a gore beast one. And all I've done is put less of the chaos stuff on it and not put the helmet on the top of the gore beast itself. And Phil and Pink have both said to give it horns, but I'm trying to get this army done quickly, so I haven't given it horns, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get around to it. And I've used the chariot dudes from the actual beast gore beastman one, so they're on cork ready to be painted as well. Everything's been sprayed, and I don't know if you can see behind me. We'll see if I swivel out of the way. All of these here are all the bases, so there's something like 90 bases, and they've all been done now. These all just need varnishing, but they've just been sprayed grey. They've been dry brushed twice, and I've covered it in AK Interactive enamel wash and then removed it, and it's just stained all of this really nicely. Very quick to do. So on the live show on Wednesday, I just basically sat there and blitzed everything. So you can see how many are done. And they're very, very quick to do. We've got these big ones as well, look. That's for the Gorgon, who's going to be standing on the back of there. And at the minute, Phil stuck him on a piece of wood, so I can actually hold him when it comes to painting him. But he's going to be, like, chilling on there. Looking very menacing. Shuffle that out of the way. The squeaky chair is doing my head in. Right. So I've got one topic today. I've open for any questions as well. I don't know how long this one will be, potentially an hour. I'll potentially go till 7 o'clock, we'll see. But I might, if people don't mind, just get on with doing some painting at the same time, because these are taking me a while. I was actually surprised with how long it's taken to paint the skin. They've got a bit on the chest, they've got a bit on the face, they've got their arms, their hands and the legs, and they're all very awkward to get to. So I want to try and get the skin on these done as soon as possible, because it's a big part of the models. And then, I mean, this is just the first 30, and I've only done 5 so far, and I've still got all the characters to go and all the other bits, and I'm struggling for time. So, right, Patrick is saying no, ordinary beastmen. They're not ordinary. They're like amazing. They are just ordinary beastmen. They've been touched by chaos and they're mutated. What else do we have? Red Cuffs is reporting in, howling mad cat, howling at his empty food bowl. But that's not good. I've just before coming online, I quickly set up the stream, make sure everything's working. There's no thumbnail or anything, so I need to do that afterwards. And then quickly jumped in the bath because there's still no shower, and then prepared tea. We're having a lovely curry that Rachel is cooking downstairs. So that is that. Dunny Woods at Wargame Online. I wondered if you had any tips for blending the underbelly of a Carnosaur with the scales to look like a more natural transition. Feathering, I mean, that's generally what I'm going to have to do with the Beastmen. They've got a lot of areas where it goes from skin to fur. So what I'm doing is when it gets to that, I'm going to be using a very small fine brush and painting almost very thin lines. So it's not a perfect, it's not, I don't know if you can see this, so it's not like flesh and then fur. It's not going to go flesh colour and then brown. It's almost going to be like that. So you can imagine if you're painting it like that, there's a blend of flesh. Don't know if you can hear me now. Blend of flesh and a blend of fur. And that's the way that's the best way I can explain it. So you just do flesh and then fur, and then you get a nice transition. In your case, it would be like scales and then flesh. The only problem with scales is you normally have your scales, your flesh will be like this, and your scales will be right next to it. So it depends. If they blend into flesh, you can do it that way. If not, then you paint them separately. You paint your scales as one colour and you paint your flesh as the second colour, and that should work fine. Patrick is saying you need a sidekick to tell you what is going on in the chat. Rachel was going to join me because there was only half an hour set up, and we've still got to get on with things like making tea and things. She just decided to get on with making tea. But if I can get you on, Patrick, if you're able to join, you're more than welcome to join me. I haven't really got set up for 2, but I can try it. Let me see if I can get Google Hangouts up. And Patrick is there. And we will call. I was like, I wonder if this is connected to anything. No, it's not. But not a problem. We can fix this. We have the technology. There we go. Let's see if we can get Patrick on, if he's available. You know what, wait for him to say if he's even available. If not, I'll just carry on. Oh, he's sitting on the train back home. There you go. Never mind. Well, at least you can have an entertaining train journey back home. Right. Let me change this back. There we go. So in terms of anything else that's been happening, I'm really just trying to get on with these bestigors, and I think it's a big task. There's a lot to do. There's not a lot of time. I think there's like 3 or 4 weeks left, so I am struggling to. And I say 3 or 4 weeks. That's because I need to try at least how the army works before going to the tournament. I can't just turn up on the day and expect Patrick to win it for me, even though that's probably what's going to happen. But I'm going to try my best to try and. I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best to at least have some games beforehand so that I have an idea of how the army works going in. And I don't think there's a lot I can even do with it, to be honest with you. It's almost... It's more about deployment. Where am I going to deploy the units? And countering whatever the enemy does, because it's very much down to reacting to what our opponents do on the day. If they push forwards, then I can get behind them, and if they stay at the back lines, I can almost surround them and tar pit an entire army. If they don't push forwards, I can basically put a big wall in front of them, and they're kind of stuck after that. And the Gorgon's quite big and scary as well, so he's going to be nice to use. Still haven't come up with a name for him yet. So I'm trying to get on with that army. All is Zangors and Enlightened here. There's a lot of love for Tzeentch, and me and I rely on you as my hammer, says Patrick. That's not good. I'm just a giant anvil, Patrick. And a very big anvil. You know, a lot of wounds. Well, not even a lot of wounds, a lot of bodies. I need a movement tray. I need a 60 infantry-sized movement tray so I can just push my army up the board. And that's just for 2 of the units. What was I saying? I was saying something. Zangors. So there's a lot of Zangors out there, and we discussed this last week. Me and Patrick did, where there's a lot of people taking Zangors. And I was looking at some of the army lists, because I've been looking at tournaments and what people were taking for 40k, and I've never been one to go and look at army lists and see what people are actually taking. But Phil was saying about, you know, certain armies appear quite regularly and others don't, and I just wanted to have a look into it, and it was insane to see the lack of variation in armies. And it was only backed up with the LVO recently. They did the LVO 40k tournament, and just seeing which armies were in there was, again, very limited. I can't remember which one was. There was one. And Pink was almost... He was right, and he was also angry at the same time, because it almost becomes... It's not a wargaming hobby. And I know there's hundreds of people who go to tournaments, and they go for different reasons other than to win. And I know you almost go to a tournament to try and do your best to try and win, and that's not a problem whatsoever. But looking at the lists and then looking at what people were taking, it was almost like they shouldn't even be, and I don't want to be nasty, but maybe not even playing wargaming. Maybe that's not the sort of hobby that would attract them. There's people who go with almost the basic painted stuff, so as minimal as possible, just to pass for the rules for the tournament, which again, I've not got anything against. If people are interested in the gaming, that's not a problem. But you almost see a mismatch of armies, a blend of stuff where they take like 3 flyers and then 3 really overpowered individual units from different races that wouldn't necessarily fight together, and min-maxing the list so that you can win the tournament. And it's almost like it's not an army, it's just a collection of figures that will win you a game. But if you put that in a cabinet, individually they'd look amazing, but as an army, it's not an army. And I'm wondering whether the rules have been changed somewhat to allow that sort of misrepresentation on the battlefield. I don't know, it's just something if I was going to go to a tournament with an army made up of individual units from different armies that didn't look like a cohesive force, then I would probably be playing something different, personally. But obviously there's loads of people who aren't interested in that. They just go to a tournament with that really powerful list and aim to win. But I'm almost enjoying, even though I know the Bray herds are really underpowered, I actually don't care, because it looks really cool. The models are quite old, and they're still really good for their age. And on the tabletop, I'm going to have, close to 100 models in one massive mass. And it's going to look pretty impressive, even if I don't paint them that well. Even if I just do base colours and wash, there's going to be such a large amount of models on the table that blend together that it's going to be good. And I think Pink was getting a little bit annoyed with it as well, because he went to a Games Workshop store probably 2 months ago now, and he went with Liam. And Liam and Pink are both very open to just Inari, that was it. That was the Inari thing. And saying that Inari are in every list, and Eldar, yeah, you just chuck Inari in a list and that's all you see. You see, so Pink and Liam both went to a GW store, and they were going to play a 1v1 and just have a very almost balanced game against each other, just to go and have fun with the forces that they've got. And they turned up, and there was 2 people there who the store manager put them against Liam and Pink instead, and said, do you mind doing a 2v2? And Pink and Liam were both like, yeah, that's no problem at all. And these others just had just pure filth list. It was the Dark Reaper. I think it was the Dark Reaper Inari list, and you hide your units behind the scenery, and with the Inari rules, you just keep on destroying one unit at a time. And Pink was just like, yeah, they won, but it was a game at a store that was supposed to be fun, and we just got trashed. And they could see what we took, they could see how we were playing, and they still didn't change the tactics other than wiping them off the table. And Liam and Pink are both very, Liam doesn't care. Liam can get trashed on turn 1 and he will not care in the slightest. He can win a game and he won't necessarily gloat at all. Liam plays for fun, which is a really good thing. Pink will play for an enjoyable game, so he doesn't like, I wouldn't say he'd enjoy a game where he would table somebody, and he doesn't like being tabled at the same time. He wants to have a good, fair, enjoyable game. And Pink, I think, didn't play any games for a while after that. It almost turned him off playing games, which is a bad thing, I think. So, but again, that could be the opponents playing one game and Pink and Liam wanting to play another game. What else are people saying? I hate Tzeentch. This is from John Thompson. I hate Tzeentch. Can't work it out how to beat them with my Sylvaneth. It depends what you're going up against. I mean, there are certain things that are very difficult to beat. The Skyfires are very powerful, but they're also limited to a sense because you can only have so many of them. With the combination of bringing them back, that's horrific. Like one of the games I played with Patrick, I charged my Maw Crusher into a unit of 6 of them, and that was the first turn charge, and I knew that it was a bad thing to do. I knew the Maw Crusher was dead after that point, but my aim was to at least remove 6 Skyfire with a Maw Crusher. With the amount of attacks that I had, I thought it was possible, and I think I still only managed to get him down to maybe 1 or 2 of the Skyfires being left, and then the very next turn he brought them back to 6 again, or on that same turn. I can't remember which rule did it, but it was almost like very difficult to deal with, combined with things like having the Tzeentch Lord, Big Bird, I forget its name, Lord of Change, I'm going to say. So that's a really powerful unit, and Patrick didn't do this, and I could see why, but he could have done. And I think at tournaments you would see it where you wrap units around the Lord of Change. If you're against somebody like Khorne or Iron Jaws or anything with a lack of shooting or very limited magic, if none at all, you just wrap your Tar Pit unit, like a Zangor unit, around your really key caster. And this goes for things like Nagash as well. I mean, you can wrap Nagash in zombies, skeletons, and anything, and it saves them from being charged. I wouldn't be able to charge a Maw Crusher if it was surrounded by zombies, and you can get zombies pretty cheap. You've almost got a bodyguard unit that's unkillable without focusing your entire force on a zombie unit. And that caster is able to just go on casting and doing whatever they want. And I think we're going to see that at tournaments, and I think it's going to be a bit sad to see, because although you can do it, a lot of people just go, yeah, you wouldn't do that. It kind of breaks it a little bit, and I think it's easy to break, which is the only problem I see with Sigmar at the minute. With certain armies, it's very difficult to, if I want to play pure Iron Jaws, if I want to play pure Bray Herds or Khorne, what have I got to answer against these big buffy units that you can just hide in the middle of units? It's almost like 8th edition fantasy. 8th edition fantasy, the majority, if not all, of the heroes had to be in the front rank of a unit. So if you charge the front rank of a unit, you can take out their characters, and you'd have to build units in a way that you would be able to stand a chance against certain things. Now in Sigmar, you can put him in the middle of a unit and surround him, and he's not going to get touched. And if you're playing anything that doesn't have shooting or magic, you can just escalate. You can multiply your entire army with the buffs and the benefits that those characters are giving you without any fear of having something to be taken out, which is why I think Sigmar has switched to a very shooty, magic-based game where you can pinpoint these characters and pick out all of these units and not have that problem when you come up against those certain armies. And the downside is if you don't have an army that can actually do that, you're at a massive disadvantage. It just seems to be that the 3 armies I was interested in have that disadvantage. With Sylvaneth, I think, going back to the question, dealing with things like Tzeentch, their Shaman is extremely powerful. That's the thing that gives the units massive buffs. So if you can target the Shaman and you don't have to get into combat with them, that's the first thing I would say. Delete the Shaman. Get rid of the casters from the Tzeentch armies. They're very weak. You can actually destroy them very quickly if you've got something to target them, especially at range. And with Sylvaneth, you've got the can't remember what they're called. They're like mini trees. They're not the big tree lords. They're the mini trees. They've got giant bows, and I would say they are the best thing to put in your army for Sylvaneth to deal with anything that's difficult in Sigmar. In a sense, you've got dryads, which you can bulk out. You can have a lot of dryads in one unit. You can stick them in some trees, and they obviously hinder the enemy and buff your dryads. So trees and dryads are going to tar pit units, and they're also going to create an area where enemies aren't going to want to go near. Like if you put a load of dryads in a tree, 9 times out of 10 the enemy's going to avoid it unless they know they can deal with it. So it's a deterrent, it's a tar pit, and it's also protection from whatever you've got, which are your shooty tree things. And you can then just go to town picking out whatever you need to take out, like the Zangor Shamans and things like that. Kernoth Hunters, thanks Patrick. We've got a few. I'm just going to read the chat before I lose it. Because I've already missed some. Right, just got the Zinch Battle box for my 1,000 Suns from Orlis Dust. They're very popular. They're very nice models as well. Hence the Inari love. So that's what we're saying. The Inari in 40k at the LVO was just incredible. Donny Woods, is the individual unit from different races an Age of Sigmar thing? I never played Fantasy, but I assume you couldn't really do that then. And I guess 40k too. So Patrick's answered this. There are 4 main factions: Chaos, Order, Death, and Destruction. In these, you can take whatever you want. So I'm just going to keep reading to make sure he's not answered the rest of it. Yeah. In Fantasy, I assume you had to have all orcs and goblins and couldn't mix in ogres. Yeah, so they've made it so you can have. And this is what I don't like playing with or against. I wouldn't want to play. In certain armies it works, like Iron Jaws with some giant orcs with some goblins. It kind of works, but I almost still don't want to do it. I think goblins should be their own faction. I think Iron Jaws should be their own faction. Ogres should be their own, and they shouldn't really mix unless you're playing against somebody else who's doing a similar thing and you both agree that it's fun and stuff. That's fine, but Dark Elves and High Elves shouldn't, in my head, mix. Wood Elves and Dark Elves should not mix. And maybe you've got an allies. They've done the allies where you can have 250 points. 20% of your army can be made up of allies, but you could still do a general Grand Allegiance army. So you could pick Order and pick anything from Order without needing to worry about the allies the limitation, the 20%. And I almost feel like they've done these Grand Allegiances like Order, Death and Destruction in Chaos, and they've got the ally rule as well, and it's almost like they should have one or the other. And I feel like maybe they should get rid of the Grand Allegiance stuff and have individual factions which are bigger than they are at the moment, but have the allied rule as well. So you have 20%. In which case you could have a High Elf army which is allowed 20% from selected allies. And I'm not saying a High Elf army like Phoenix Guard or whatever that unit is, where you're allowed to pick from 3 units. That's not an army. What I'm saying is all of the High Elf forces are one faction. Then you can have 20% of allies taken from something which is either makes sense or was in Order in general. So nice one, Stewie. So you could have 800 points of High Elves, and then you're allowed 200 points of Stormcast. That's where I would see it as working. But at the minute, you can have 1,000 points of Order and take that from Dark Elves, High Elves, Stormcast, Seraphon. You can mix the lot, and it doesn't matter. And that's where I think they've got 2 rules that work well on their own, but don't work well together. It's almost clockwork, Stewie. This is 25 past 6, and you decided to start drinking. And you've heard me now, haven't you? And that's the same with 40k. They've got the general indexes or indexes. I don't know, but you can have Astra Militarum quite big. You've got huge brackets to switch between. I just think they need sorting so that you don't have the cherry picking the best units to put into one giant force. I think that's the problem it's got at the moment. Let's keep going through the chat before I run out. John Thompson. Does Dougio have any interest in playing Infinity or Malifaux? I think in general, most of us are going to be open to playing any games. I'm going more towards painting rather than gaming at the moment, to be completely honest. The models look amazing. I'd definitely be interested in painting some stuff, and I think I've been speaking to Phil about stuff that I'll be doing for the channel, and I think with the people we're getting on board, I'm going to say, the stuff we're going to be getting involved with, I think I'll be doing more painting than anything else. And the Infinity models are definitely some that I would pick up and paint. And there's like hundreds of Rangers. There's thousands of models that I would be interested in painting up. So I think even if you don't see it as a game on the channel, you may see it as a tutorial, at least some sort of input from different systems. And there's so many good companies out there that you don't see their models of. And sometimes it's because there isn't a game with it. They make miniatures to put into a different game system. You know, you'll proxy them to use as something else. But the models are still like beautiful. Like, I want to paint some more stuff, basically. Malifaux models are amazing. I love the gangs. I love the themes and that sort of stuff. And I think I'm definitely going to be painting some of those. And Dunnywood is saying, yeah, that is something I don't really like because it doesn't seem thematic. And I think that's down to individuals. Like, some people want thematic looking armies, other people don't care. And that's personal choice. So you can't really say you can't enjoy the hobby and what you enjoy doing because that's what they enjoy doing, you know. I think you've got to find people who are after the same thing. Al Kirkham is here. Welcome, Al Kirkham. And I've still got Al the Ancient to make up. I'm looking forward to going back to the Black Dragons, but priority is Grey Herds. Then I think it'll be the Black Dragons. And then I've got the Stormcast army. And I'm not sure whether... I mean, I gave Phil the Fire Slayers. I'm not sure whether I'm going to give him the Stormcast as well. I'm selling some of my armies. Luke, my good friend Luke, is after some of the stuff, and it's helping pay him with some of the bits and pieces that I've got to pay for at the moment. So I'm probably going to be selling him my Word Bearers, my Space Wolves, and the Grey Knights, because it was the army I built for Rachel, but she's focused on Seraphon, and it'll be Custodes over Grey Knights. But I think that'll bring in some cash. That's 3 armies that, one, they're taking up space for something, you know. I've got to put the Stormcast in a case, they'll go up there instead, and 2, they're just 3 small armies that I don't see me using anymore, so I'll shift them on. And I think Stormcast, Black Dragons and Grey Herds and Iron Jaws, they'll be the main armies I'll have. And then after that, I think I'm going to focus on doing a lot of individual models. Obviously the elves are a big focus, depending on whether we're going to see like the Sons of Malekith coming out, or Malarian. I want to see what they look like, but it could potentially be another army. Acharya is here as well. Welcome, Acharya. I hope you've moved in and stuff, and you're all sorted. Me and Rachel were looking today about moving house. Oh my god, stressful stuff. Trying to find somewhere that's suitable, but I think by the end of this year we're going to aim to be moved. Don't know where. Don't know what's going to happen yet. But obviously moving is a big stress as well. Patrick, did you see the army list from GW for the new Nagash Battle Tome? 3 battle line units for 60 points each. They should change it back to 25% or more. Yeah, and we spoke about this, and I think the more I'm playing Sigmar, the more I'm thinking you can take the best of both. You know, Hovis, best of both. You can take the army building from the 8th edition fantasy with the simplified rules, the easier rules to follow and play with Age of Sigmar. I think 25% minimum core or 25% minimum battle line is something that would definitely be an improvement. I think the allies being changed one way or the other. I think the Grand Faction should go, in my opinion, and they should make the factions bigger again. I think High Elves should be one. I think Dark Elves should be one. Whatever you want to call them. Obviously, for their IP and their copyright situation, they might want to call them... I don't know. You've got Daughters of whatever they're called. What's her name? It's completely gone. Sons of Malarian. That's the one I keep thinking. you give them a new name, whatever you want to call them, like the Drakarian 40k. Just give them a new name, but make it bigger so you've got more choice. I think sorting out allies, minimum 25% on battle line. I think both of those are good things to do. One thing I did miss from 8th edition was the ability to customize your characters, customize your heroes, and you've got that almost with the artifacts and the command traits and things like that, but there's almost only so many things you will actually choose. There's only, in 8th edition, you would, I think this is the way the rules worked. It'll be difficult to do it in Age of Sigmar now, because you would have things where you would have increased rend and or armor pit penetration as it was, and then you would build characters to have increased armor save. So you might give them like enchanted shields and armor to get yourself to a 2-up armor save, but then you might want to make a more killy character, so you would focus less on defense and more on offense. And the customization between the characters in 8th edition was something that was quite unique and enjoyable. That's something I did miss when Age of Sigmar switched, and Sigmar almost gives you an option. You can take this with this, or this with this, or this with this. It's not as unique, I find, but that's not a bad thing, because if you go to a tournament or if you go playing at a local club and you don't know all of the equipment, you don't need to know it, because it's a bit easier. You're looking at a unit war scroll and it tells you the 3 options. It's very easy to play games against other people, and I think that's probably something that I didn't enjoy changing, but I understand why they did it, and I think they should keep it the way they have. But there's certain other things like the minimum 25% battle line and the allies that I think they could change, and it wouldn't make a difference other than a positive one in the game. Dunnywoods, if you have... Oh no, don't skip on me. If you have all high elves in one army, would you put all goblins in one army or split them into spider goblins and night goblins, for example? I quite like small factions of Sigmar, to be fair. I think goblins should be a collective. So spider goblins, night goblins, and all of those. I think when you break it down into smaller factions, unless you can support them, it ruins it. You know, ideally, yes, you would split them all down. You would have spider goblins and night goblins, and you would have iron jaws and normal, savage orcs and all of that. You'd have them all split up, but you'd have to support them. You have to keep them current and competitive, and you have to do that with all of these factions. So at the minute, if they're struggling to do, let's say we've got 20 factions, I don't know how many there are exactly, but say we've got 20 factions and only 10 of those are updated. So for a year or 2 or 3 year period, only 10 of those armies are actually updated to work with the other ones. That means you've got 10 other armies that effectively, unless you're not bothered about being as competitive as the others, you just won't pick them. And I think that's a problem, as opposed to if you've take those 20 factions and you make them into 10, which are consistently updated, tweaked, FAQ'd, whatever. I think you're better off having it like that. If Games Workshop or whoever else can balance it to the point where you have 20 balanced, regularly updated factions, I think that's a good thing. I think having more choice is definitely not a bad thing. I think the problem lies with not being able to update them and keep them current. When they bring out a new army, like Caradron Overlords comes out, rather than fixing the ones that are already there and keeping them updated, why release new ones? It sells models. You can see Games Workshop's doing a good thing. They're making a ton of cash. Their profits are rising. They're doing a lot of things correctly, but I just think, if you're not going to update the old stuff, just get rid of them. I know that sounds harsh, but I think rather than split them up and release new things, fix what you've got, and then if that means, instead of getting rid of them, if it means bulking them into a bigger faction, so you have all the goblins together, and that way nobody loses their old models, they can keep that goblin book updated, I think that's not a bad thing. But obviously this is all my opinion. I take this as nothing that is ever going to happen or change. I just think this is my personal thoughts on it, as these chats are. It's just what I think at the time. I'm wrong with a lot of things. My opinions are obviously not shared by many people, or a lot of people, and take from it what you want. Dunnywoods, I guess some are easier to split than others. They definitely need to rework some of it though. For an example, Ironjaws is definitely one of the factions that have had it better than others. Ironjaws had their own book, and they had a lot more choice. Even though you've got brutes, you've got Ardboys, and you have, is that it? I think my mum hit for Battle Line. Battle Line, you've got obviously the Gore Grunters, but that's the army. You've got more choice than things like Brayherd. Brayherd, there's I think 6 units in the entire Bray Herd selection that you can choose from, and that's including the 2 characters, and they have no big creatures. You have to ally in the big creatures from other stuff. So Bray Herd's extremely limited. I know the Phoenix army is very limited. You've got the Frost Phoenix, the Flame Phoenix, the Phoenix Captain thing, and then the Phoenix Guard. You've only got small amount of limited stuff. Same with the White Lions force. You've got the White Lion Chariot, the character, and the normal White Lions. I think there's only 3 in a faction. There's 3 units. That's not a faction. That's a select choice. You can't really make a very unique army out of that. What are you going to choose? You're going to choose more White Lions. What else can we bulk it out with? Oh, more chariots. It's almost, you're not going to have anything special. It'll look nice, but if you had, as it was, High Elves as a whole, you could mix in some other stuff and it'll be fine without needing to go to the Grand Allegiance stuff. Sean Blake is here. Welcome, Sean. Hope you're well. The Sam in capital letters. Chaya, Infinity models and Malifaux models are beautiful, even as a tutorial for painting and modelling for the WGO channel. And I think definitely, I've got the Scale 75 paints behind me there. Going to be amazing to paint things like individual characters and stuff. And I will really want to push myself. I'm thinking towards the end of this year, early next year, I want to focus heavily on painting again and do more tutorials, do different tutorials, not focus on the same sort of things like skin tones. I was talking to Ralph, and Ralph was saying, you've got a lot of tutorials, but a lot of them are the same. Like, you've got loads of skin tutorials. And I think that's because I was trying to build up collections of stuff. So you've got a lot of choice for basing tutorials, skin tutorials, hair. You've got things to look through and choose. But I probably need to do more. The premium side of the website's got the bigger, I'm going to say bigger, but the tutorials which have got more to them. So on YouTube, it is just like a how to paint black hair, how to paint red hair sort of thing. On the website, as a premium subscriber, you get access to how to paint a model, and that will have a 5 to 20 minute, 30 minute video of painting a model from start to finish. And in that, it won't just be a hair tone, it will be how to paint the whole model from start to finish. And I think we're going to release more of those on YouTube. We've got an idea of what we want to do to get more stuff onto YouTube, because obviously time is limited. And I think once we've worked that out and we've talked about it, I think that's going to be an option. So you may see more. DJ the Lucky One is here. Welcome, DJ the Lucky One. Frank as well. Welcome, Frank. I've seen your updates on Facebook. Keep them coming. Sean Blake, moving sucks, Sam. If I lived out your way, I would offer a hand when you did move. Yeah, I think Rachel was she didn't enjoy when we moved into this house. There was a lot of faffing with solicitors and the moving. We were in this place for, I think, over a month before we even had any furniture or any internet or anything, and we slept on the floor for a month on a sleeping bag. It wasn't, I didn't mind it too much. We had 4 walls and a roof overhead, so it was fine, but it was I'm getting fed up with literally everything breaking. And I know you get that wherever you go, but I think we've been here for 7 years, and again, I know that's not a long time, but it's very small. It's a 2-bed, 2 up 2 down house. It's expensive for what it is, and I think I've just had enough of this place, to be fair. It's good to get out and do different things, and sometimes moving house and having a change of scenery is definitely a good thing. And we've seen some amazing places that are like 3 or 4 bed for not much more than we could sell this for, which is unbelievable. And if we moved to a different area, where my family are from, we're from Derby, the Derby area, for what we've got here, we could get a 4-bed detached house with a big garden and a garage, and the garage would give me a lot more space for hobbying and things. And I think it's not something we're going to do until the end of this year, but we're definitely going to be planning it and switching out. We've got to get this combi boiler sorted, because we've got no shower at the moment still, and the fixes we need to do to the house first. So once they're done and we've sorted some of the rooms out, I think we'll look at that at the end of the year anyway. It's not hobby related. What was I talking about? Hobby? Don't know. Kane. So DJ the Lucky One. Allies keyword in the General's Handbook 2017 makes sense to me. I'll take a look at that afterwards. I think I was saying at the beginning, I think doing the Allies keyword thing works. I just think if you're going to be doing the Allies, get rid of the Grand Allegiance stuff, and it works better because you don't have the cherry picking of units from all the different factions. Chapter Master Varrock is here. Welcome, Chapter Master. I've not seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well. I keep seeing all the updates. Your updates are insane. It's literally the news channel if you want to go for anything updated. You just check out Virak, and he's on it before things are even announced. He is on it. Frank saying Nurgle just got a boost. I think people love Nurgle. People love Nurgle and elves at head office in GW, and they're going to keep them going. Al, I just got my Pantheon models and plan to use my new Scale 75 paints on them. I need to look at the Pantheon models. I'm going to have to remember to look at those. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy Pantheon models, and I'll have a look at that after this, Al, just to see what they're like. There's a lot of models that have taken my fancy that I'd like to paint. I've got a lot to get on with at the moment, but there's tons to do. Wee Green Stunted, how are you getting along with your bolt action? I mean, I almost blitzed my stuff. All the armour was done. The infantry is all base coated. They're all in a case. I bought a KR case to fit them in there. They all need painting, the infantry do, but I don't think it's a big job. I think it's a smaller job than the rest of the projects I've got to do. The problem I've got is when Mike basically disappeared, he was going to be the other half of doing the bolt action stuff. Beforehand we're going to do this project. I'm really interested in it. Are you able to do this and commit to it, sort of thing? So, we drove to Warlord Games. We spoke to the guys there. We had a really good look around. We picked up a load of stuff. We had the plans going forwards of what we wanted to do, and we were getting on with that. And then Mike disappeared, and that was almost like, that was a huge, it's been quite a lot of difficult months of trying to get on top of things, because I was chatting to Mike on a daily basis, and we'd spend sometimes 6-7 hours on a hangout just chatting and getting on with stuff, and he's got stuff he needs to get on with in his daily life, so he's got to sort that out. But almost put a stop on bolt action. And Dave, who's been on the channel, I think he's been on a couple of the chats, he's definitely been on a battle report, I think maybe one, I don't know if we put it out, but Dave, he volunteered to take the Americans off Mike, what he was doing, and get on top of them. And again, he's not had the time to get, he's busy with real life work and stuff. And I think a lot of people, they're happy to almost commit to the project, but it's very difficult to actually commit to the project. It's a lot of work to do stuff for the channel, to get things painted on time, to do the battle reports, to do the editing and keep on top of the rules. It's easy to say, yeah, we'll do it, but then it's difficult to actually do it. So Dave's not he's not got the time to do it either now. So it's almost at the stage where I can paint the Americans, I can paint the Germans. I may end up just doing painting tutorials, but the other thing is there's the Wargamer, and he's got a channel full of painting tutorials based on bolt action, so I don't feel the need to do my own. I could do my own army, and I could go to events and I could do things with them, but in terms of painting tutorials, I think the Wargamer does a pretty good job. He's on the website, on the Wargamer Hub, and he's got a nice variety of painting tutorials, from everything to do with World War II models and everything else. But World War II primarily, I think, is his strong point. He does the research, he gets the uniforms right, and he does a good job on it. I don't feel the need to do them, so I'll get mine done, and then depending on who else in WJO or whoever else in the area is going to be doing bolt action, we could be doing more of it in the future. I was just a bit, the road, the bumps in the road, they just pop up from time to time, and you just have to reorganize, rearrange, and plan for things in the future. And I've just realised we've not even talked about the topic of the show, which we'll get on to. I'm just going to go through the chat, and then we'll talk about how important hobby equipment is, because I've got different thoughts on this. Big Rich is here. Welcome, Big Rich, and Fell Hate. Welcome to both of you. DJ the Lucky One. Sorry, Sam missed the very beginning. Don't worry, DJ. This is why YouTube's a good thing, because it saves it. If you ever want to go back and watch it, you can do. I feel like, although I don't mind repeating myself, anybody who has been here from the beginning, or anybody who watches this back, me going over the same thing 2 or 3 times in a video is not, I've got a topic to get through as well at some point. It's a good job I don't have more than one each week now. Al Kirkham saying painting is relaxing and like therapy for me. It was for me at one point. Now it's become very much work based, but I'm slowly enjoying it more. I think going back down to individual models, it will be relaxing. I think when you've got a deadline and you've got a big project to get on with, it's definitely more stressful. and becomes less fun and less relaxing when you've got a large number of things to do, and when you've got deadlines to hit. That's where it becomes less fun for me. So I think getting back to enjoying it is something I'm going to aim to do this year as well. Tanya T as well, welcome Tanya. I hope you're doing well. I don't think I've seen you in. Oh, you were on the Wednesday chat actually, I believe. There's a lot of new names popping up at the minute, so welcome to all of you. And if you are in the chat and you're not, I know there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have a YouTube account, so you can't actually comment, but if you ever want to say hi, feel free. If you ever want to join the Facebook group, it's Wargamer Online Space Community. If you type that on Facebook, you can join there. And we've got the forum, which is free to sign up. So if you go on wargameronline.com, go across to the forums, there's a tab a little link at the top. You can create an account for free and you can post your progress of anything you want. You can ask questions, you can answer questions, and just get involved with another community, and it's completely free and open to anybody to use. So everyone's welcome to do that. We Green Stunties, come along to Imps in Lincoln in March. There's a tournament on then, I will be there. I don't know about March just because I've only got, if it was later on in the year, I could potentially do the bolt action, somewhere in between the projects. But because I've got these Bray herds, I've got a huge Bray herd, bigger task than I should have set myself to do by March. I'm going to struggle to get, realistically, the Bray herds and the bolt action stuff done. And there's a lot of shows coming up between now and June, July time. There's ChillCon, there's Warhammer Fest, there's Salute, there's Espen, there's all these shows that we want to try and attend. And I don't know how much time realistically I'm going to get the army projects done. So I don't want to promise anything anymore. I'm tired of promising projects and not getting them done. So I'm gonna do a project. I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna finish it, and then I'm gonna move on to the next one. That's something I learned from last year, is trying to do too many things and not having the time, and then losing the willpower to do some of them. Big Mac Dan School, evening all. Sorry I'm late. I've been making a painting vid and watching the Six Nations rugby. Don't worry about it. Thank you for joining. I don't watch rugby or sports, unfortunately, so I can't join in with that. I'm just a nerd through and through, and not much else, to be honest with you. Big Rich, look at me. I'm making and painting my army for the last 6 months, but I'm crazy. I'm making a Dark Angels army with like 10 companies. That is a massive task, Rich, but you'll get through it. I mean, if you set yourself the task and you stick to it, if you don't let the distractions get in your way, you'll get it done. And one of my goals in wargaming was to get a company done, because I'm a butterfly. I get sidetracked so quickly. Whoops, lost something. And doing a company of one chapter was one of my goals, and I think it's still potentially going to be the Black Dragons. However, if I can nail the White Scar paint scheme and I can get enough of I'm debating on getting the Adeptus Custodes jet bikes and then converting them with the rest of the Primaris models that I've got, and I wanted to do a White Scar themed Primaris army. The problem is there are no rules for that, so I'd have to use generic bikes, Space Marine bikes, and have Primaris models, and they're like £35 just for the 3 bikes. Then I've got to get the Primaris models, which I've got some of, but I'd have to do all the converting. I'm going to be looking at least 20. I'm going to need at least 20 to 25 bikes. At £35 for 3, it's expensive. It's a lot of converting, which I don't mind doing because it will look impressive. And that's the sort of aim I'd be needing. I need 25 bikes. Patrick was crazy enough to get me the giant repulsor Forge World tank when we were at Warhammer World with him last year, and I want to make that the centerpiece of the army. So I want things like the repulsor, I've forgotten the name of it, the giant Forge World, big nasty thing, that with the repulsors, with the bikes, everything's mobile, everything's fast, and that would be the core of the White Scar army that I would be designing. But I'm also kind of holding off because I think they will release some Primaris bikers at some point, and I'll kick myself if they do that after I've just spent a huge wedge of money on converting Custodes ones into Primaris bikers. But again, that's a project that I need to stick to once I've got the other stuff done. Al, real life has a habit of throwing a curve at you and knocking you off course. Have to roll with it sometimes. Yeah, and I think I'm getting better at rolling with it. Literally every bit of plumbing in the house has broke in the last 2 months, and it gets to the point where like even 2 nights ago I was like, do I just move back into my mum's? Like, it was getting to the point where I was going to drive to Derby and just stay with my mum because it was difficult to deal with at times. And then there's all sorts of other things kicking off as well, and it's difficult to see past the problems, if you get what I mean. Like, all you see is problem, and it's difficult to deal with them. So I think I'm getting, Rachel's really good and supportive, and we've got really good supportive friends and things. So it's definitely better than it was. Astreus, that's what it was called, yes. Oh, when my falchions finish with it. The Astrayers. But that's your 3 falchions. Felhate, my Samael's bike, is still the best. It's an amazing bike, Felhate. Right, let's do the topic. We'll do the topic at the end of the show rather than the beginning of the show. And I feel like we are going to go over an hour, so I apologise to anyone who's only got the hour, but we may go for a little bit longer. So the topic is, how important is your hobby equipment? That's what I've written. That's what we're going to go through. Now, I've seen a lot of people at clubs, at stores, and online, all saying that equipment is vital and it makes no difference. So there's a good debate to be had on whether equipment is important or not. And I think for me, I'm very much on the side of it is important. I've painted with rubbish brushes, cheap brushes, and I've painted with more expensive brushes, and I definitely find that for me, having a good brush is a huge part to making it easier to paint. You still obviously need skill, and you need to practice, and you need to build up the you need to spend time painting a lot of stuff before you're going to get good. That's a given. That's with anything that you do. The more you do, the better you'll get. But I definitely think after you've dabbled in painting for a little bit, even if you start with cheap brushes and cheap paints and practice, and you get used to holding your brush and getting more accurate with it, I think upgrading to some decent quality brushes is definitely something that will help you improve. And I'm not saying that going out and buying a £12 brush, the Winsor & Newton brushes and things, going out and buying a £12 brush is going to make you better at painting, because it isn't. There's more to it than just buying good equipment and then suddenly becoming good at it. But I've painted with rubbish brushes. So at the minute, where has it gone? Here. I mean, this isn't a rubbish. I love this is a medium layer brush from GW, and this has got a little bit of a pen grip on it at the minute. But you can see it's not even got a point on it anymore. But I use this medium layer brush for doing most of my base coating and putting all of my details on. This is what I was painting all of the skin with. And I've refused to go down to my new medium layer, which has got a brush, just because I try and make the most out of the old brushes before I switch. I've got this weird, I'll paint badly for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours with a brush that should have been switched out just to get the most out of it. But if I ever want to do any sort of detail, if my brush doesn't have a point, I'm just fighting an uphill battle. There's no point doing it. I think the point on your brush is the best and the most important thing. This is a medium layer brush from Games Workshop. It's like £3-4. It will last me a fair amount of time as long as I look after it. And I think looking after your equipment is more important than buying the expensive stuff. If you don't get the paint on the ferrule, which is the metal bit at the base of the brush, it will last longer. If you do get paint on there, it'll split and then it'll ruin it. But painting without a tip on the brush is going to be the most difficult thing to do. There are better brushes. The Artificer brush from Games Workshop is easily one of my favourites. This one's gone down to almost 2-3 hairs now because I've used it so much. That one's about £11. It's quite an expensive one. I would say that's an expensive one, but it isn't for some people. The Artificer brush I would only buy when I need them. I never have backups. The medium brush, £3-4. I keep maybe 2 or 3 of those. If I ever use one, I just switch to another one. You know what I mean? The Artificer brush, I only use these for edge highlighting. A lot of the time I'll try and get away with using the medium brush and do as much of the edge highlighting with that. But when it gets down to faces, painting eyes, painting the very fine edge highlights, I switch to the Artificer brush. So I think it's important to know what equipment works for you, and don't just go out and spend loads of money on everything thinking it will make you paint better. For me, I can get by on a medium layer brush from Games Workshop, an Artificer brush, and then After that, anything else is extra. Those 2 brushes do the majority of my painting. I've got the old standard brush from Games Workshop, which is effectively the medium layer, and that's, you know, I've got multiple versions of those. The only other ones I use are like wash brushes, but with those you can use anything. That doesn't need to be an expensive brush. It's just to put a wash on. So for me, I'd say in this, is equipment important? It's gone more into recommendations again, but find yourself a good medium brush and a good fine detail. Those 2 I would say are key. In terms of spending money, I bought only a few, because these are about £11 to £15 per brush. These are the Winsor & Newton Series 7, and although I like them, I've had brushes that just fray, and just from first or second use, and 2 of my brushes, I've used them once and they've frayed. So although they are expensive and they're recommended by everybody, I personally have better luck with the Games Workshop brushes than these Winsor & Newton ones. But I think they are all different. Broken Toad, that's one I've done a review of in the past, and I've only ever had the one set from them, and they've been really good. You know, they're almost, in my opinion, as good as the Winsor & Newton brushes, and they're at a fraction of the price. You can get 3 brushes for like £20 or £25 depending on where you buy them from, and they've lasted me a very long time. They're at the point now where they're all, you know, they're a bit knackered now, but they've done a good amount of painting. I painted the entire Wordbearer army, the Space Wolves, a load of individual models, and they're still working. Broken Toad are incredibly good. So I think there is a difference in brushes, but it's getting used to them and knowing which ones work for you, and not just throwing money at them for the sake of them, thinking it's going to make you better. So that's brushes. Other equipment that's important, the wet palette. I've got this one here. I was going to be painting this show, but I haven't. I've just been too busy talking. This wet palette is dirt cheap. It's an old Games Workshop box. I've done a video on this channel. If you search for wet palette, it will probably pop up. But this is an old GW basing kit tray, and I've just taken out the insides. I've put a bit of foam in there, a bit of greaseproof paper, and this is brilliant. It's got a lid, so every time I'm done with it, I put the lid on it, and this makes paint last a long time. When you're painting, you can do entire projects almost using one wet palette, so it's perfect. I'd recommend picking up or creating your own wet palette as well. So far that's 2 brushes and a wet palette. I'd say they are key to painting for me, not necessarily for everybody, but for me I have to have those 2 things. Oh no, I'm getting messages. That's from Acharya saying about gas leaks needing a new boiler and plumbing would have cost 2,000 plus, but we're only covered. I'll have a look at that, Acharya. Cheers. I mean, we've been having quotes from all of ours, and they've got to install the pipes are the wrong size. We've only got 15mm piping, and we need 22mm piping. And if we don't switch to the other piping, it's about $2,500 for the boiler. But everyone we've spoke to said you need the bigger piping, because when you need the pressure, you need the 22mm piping at least. To get one of those installed in the house, it's going to be, everyone's quoted between $4,000 and $4,500. So it's ridiculous. Like $4,500 is a huge chunk of money. We've spent all our savings on the windows last year, so we didn't have $4,500. But we've got family that can loan us the money. But it's a big chunk of money. And if we're moving house at the end of the year, we were like, is it worth paying that much money for a combi boiler to do that? But the shower we've got doesn't run off anything other than the combi, and it's got by because of some dodgy plumbing in the past. But we can't do without a shower. We've got a bath, and I know that sounds very, first world problems and everything, but we need a shower really. We've had one for so many years that switching to a bath every day it's a waste of water, it's a waste of time. And it's just rubbish. Anyway, back to equipment. We'll talk about that afterwards, Acharya. So wet palette. Felhate, what do you use instead of tissue? I'm going to read the rest of the chat. But instead of tissue, I use a towel. This is just a normal towel. And the stuff that I take, if I need to paint, I go around to Phil's or whatever, I'll take this towel, I'll take my wet palette, which has obviously got a lid on it, I'll take my brushes, and I've been using this, not to plug them, but I am very much impressed with the A-Case stuff. It does a really good job, but this A-Case brush, what's it called? It's just a brush case. It's like £8 or £9, but look at that. That's all of my brushes, and I just roll it up and I can take that with me. So all my brushes are in a nice little bag. I've got my wet palette and I've got my towel. And then I've switched. I used to have a big water pot, and I've switched to just using a small one now. This is a shot glass. So I use 2 shot glasses. I've got one with water in it for normal paint and one for metallic paint. And I just make sure I don't mix them. So in terms of equipment, that's all I take with me. It's the paints and that sort of stuff. What do you... Oh, I meant in your wet palette instead of tissue, Sam. I use a piece of foam. So you can see the thickness on that. It's about 4 or 5 millimeters, and it comes as a big... It's almost like a 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter sponge. And all I do is cut it down to size, and I put them inside here. And behind me, just up there, you can see there's some green looking stuff. I've got a stack of like 6 of them. So, you know, in 2 months time, if I need to switch it, I just take one off the shelf and I just put it in and then I switch it over. So that's really easy for me to do that as well. Let me go through the chat and then we'll carry on. DJ the Lucky One, I'm not doing anything with my armies until a codex comes out. Glad Necrons and Dark Eldar are coming. Yes. Big Rich. 4 regular companies, Raven Company, Terminator Company, 4 Primaris Company, a tank and a plane. Jeez. That's a lot. That's a big commitment, Rich, but it'll look impressive. You're just going to need space to store it and a lot of time to get that done. Al Kirkham, no wonder you want to move. You need a live-in plumber. Yes. Yeah. Plumbing. I mean, it's the worst thing. I says to Pink yesterday, I'd happily live in a cave, I think, you know, with a stream down the side. I'd rather live in a cave somewhere with a stream, and in the middle of nowhere would be nice. But the problem is you have no internet then. It's going to be difficult. DJ the Lucky One, I have a gamer mate who's a plumber in Rushden if you need help. Yeah, I think that was the other thing, because we don't know anybody in the area plumber-wise, recommendations and stuff. We had a really bad plumber. It cost us £500 and it's caused all of the problems. They put the shower pump on wrong. They did all the repiped everything, which has changed all the pressure. So none of our pipes work very well. The hot water splurts out all over the place. It needs completely redoing, but it's, you know, that's cost us a ton of money and left us with more problems. So anyway, less plumber again. I'm reading the chat, but I'm trying to avoid plumber chat. Big McDanskull, I find that the most important thing about equipment is that it works for you. I love my army painter brushes, but others couldn't do without their Winsor and Newton. Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what I'm saying as well. For me, Games Workshop brushes are perfect. Broken Toad, if I had, you know, if I was chucking money at something, I would probably buy Broken Toad over any other brand at the moment. But Winsor and Newtons do work if you can get a good deal on them. They're good brushes. I just think they're hyped up quite a bit. They are really good brushes, and if you look after them, they'll last years. But I don't necessarily look after them as well as I should be doing for the price that they cost. You know, I'd rather buy cheaper brushes like Games Workshop or even Broken Toad, use them for a smaller amount of time, but not have to, you know, fully look after them over and over again. Dunnywood's was £30 for like 11 decent brushes. I don't know what brand that was, Dunnywood's, but 30 quid for 11 decent brushes is a really good value. I mean, you know, £3 to £4 a brush, I think that's what you'd be paying. I know Liam, when he used to come to the store when I was running the Games Workshop store, he used to turn up with these packs of brushes. They were like £5, £1 for 5 brushes. And he used to sit and paint, and it was painful to watch him paint because he'd be painting with effectively a fist. You know, trying to paint detail with these fists, and they'd fray all the time. You could see him struggling. And he's not a bad painter. Liam's a good painter, but he gets by with bad equipment. And that's why when a lot of people say it's not your equipment, it's your skill, it's a bit of knowing your equipment and having decent enough equipment to do the job and having the skill. It's a combination of both. I think picking up 30p brushes and trying to paint with them, you're making yourself a lot of work for something that can be fixed by having a brush that holds a point. And I think that's what I would say. Thordilum de Caladai, finally home from work. These early shows, I can change them. Trying Saturdays at 6 just because it means that in the evenings, if we have friends round or if I've got to go somewhere, I have the option to do earlier shows and I can then do something with the rest of the evening. But I'm potentially going to be doing We've got plans to switch things around again. If people really don't like the 6 o'clock in the evening shows, I can always switch it to a later one or a different day. The only problem is if it's a different day, it'll probably be a weekday. So it might be back to a Friday evening at 8 or 9, I could probably do that. But it's a lot of people can only make the weekend shows, so it depends. And as Pink likes to say, it swings and roundabouts. He said that so many times over the week. And Achaya is linking all of the videos. Thank you, Achaya, for how to make a cheap wet palette and review of broken toe brushes. Slippy Tiger, I tried making one, didn't go too well. Now I just use a Chinese takeaway lid. I don't know how Warhammer community uses those disposable paper ones. They're good, they don't last as long, but they're quick and easy to use. The back of a Chinese takeaway lid works fine. The problem, if you leave it out, when over a few days, if it hasn't got a lid to fasten it down and seal it, then it just dries out. You still need a lid, as far as I've experienced, to keep the paint lasting over a good number of days. Dunny Woods, for some reason my other message disappeared. Just said I got an army painter brush set. Okay, so that must be the one that was £30 for 11 brushes. And army painter brushes are good. I know Rory, who now works at the community team, when he was painting in the store with me, he brought out this. I mean, he uses as big a brush as possible to get the army painted as fast as possible, and it's insane how quickly he paints, and he does a good job with them. But he brought out one brush, and it was I think it was called the Psycho brush, and it was literally one hair. You buy it from Army Painter with one hair on it, and it was insane. But they've got a good range of brushes, and I know people swear by them, so what I would say is try everything. And certain things, like Acid Drop, which I've reviewed, and I'm sure Achai is going to put up in a minute, but Acid Drop gives you a great chance to try equipment, and I know they're doing more with putting brushes in there now. At first it was paints, he switched it to now paints and models, and you're going to have paints, models and brushes. It's basically trying out new hobby equipment as a whole. So if you haven't seen the Acid Drop stuff, check him out. And I know he's doing different boxes available. I just got to pop up Ryan Hinsley, thank you for subscribing, Ryan. But yeah, Acid Drop's a really good one because it makes you try new things, stuff that you wouldn't normally try. I've got the watercolours behind me, which I'm going to be trying as well on an individual model soon. There's some nice blues. Felhay, I made the wet palette from Sam's video about 6 months ago. It's amazing, but in it he used tissue, so I just wondered what he uses now. Yeah, I found sponge works better, it lasts longer. The kitchen towel works fine, as an even cheaper option. Kitchen towel is good, but you have to switch the towel out more regularly. Whereas if you use the sponge, and it's the flat sponge, not the ones that you use for washing dishes, the flat sponges work perfectly now. I found that's the tweaked version. Achaya, would you recommend trying and sticking to a single paint range to start with, e.g. GW, Vallejo, Scale 75, Tamiya, or mix and match? Personally, I would. For myself, I like sticking to one that I know, but I also don't mind dabbling. So for me, GW paint range is the one that I know now as much as anything else. The Acid Drop gives you a opportunity to try new things without buying a whole new range and looking into all of the different sets. It's almost like, well, we'll see what I'm going to get this month, and then I'm going to try it, and if I like it, then I can buy more of that range. I've struggled with Scale 75 because they paint very differently, and this is going back to the equipment question. All of the paints, in my opinion, are different, and some of them are similar. They've got similar properties. So the watercolours are a gel-based paint, and Ralph was telling me the Scale 75 was a gel-based paint. So those two paint ranges are very similar. The Scale 75 has got a lot of pigment and what was the word? Not impact. There's a lot of pigment in them, so they're very. I forgot the word. How have I forgot that word? Anyway, they're bright. If you want brightly painted models that stand out, Scale 75 are brilliant, and there's a fantasy range from Scale 75 that look fantastic. GW ones are kind of like, they do everything all round. They're probably not good at certain things, but they're better in others. For army painting, I find GW to be the best range in general, and I think it's the most reliable that I've found. I've used Army Painter stuff, and some of their paints are great, some of them are bad. So same with Vallejo. Phil was telling me like some of the paints go through the airbrush brilliantly, others don't. It's just like different levels of pigment and quality for certain paints. I think GW have got a very small amount of paints which are horrendous, and that's things like Mephiston Red and Ceramite White. Those two are like the bane of my life. I won't even buy them. I have got Mephiston Red, but I bought it in the Air range because it's thinner and it doesn't clump up. But I'll never buy a Mephiston Red base colour anymore. But they're very limited in the bad paints for GW. But I'm really looking forward to using more Scale 75. I think it's a good range. I need to get the metallic set. That's one that I definitely need to pick up. But I just love the colours. I mean, they've got some quite neutral looking ones. I don't know if that'll show up. No, probably not. That's a Scale 75 fantasy colour called Resurrection Flesh, and I'm going to use that on the Beastman. But behind me, you can see, look at all those bright colours. They're awesome. Felhate, I mix all my GW paints with Vallejo mediums. I haven't tried that, but I might do. Alster Nation, welcome Alster Nation. Achaya, I don't have skill or technique. I have to rely on my charm and good looks, which is why I'm depressed. That's really sad, Achaya. Achaya, you're very skilled in many different ways, and you know you've got a very important job. You're very skilled in ways that I could never be. And you're very intelligent as well. You know, there's qualities to every individual, and painting is something that you'll just get better at with practice. It's not something, some people are born with it, but most of the time you can learn. And I think that's the good thing with tutorials and communities sharing ideas and skills and sharing stuff that will make it easier. I think anybody can learn. It's just persistence and practice. They're the two things. Al Kirkham, I only buy Winsor & Newton when Blick Co. has sales, usually 20% off. Yeah, I always keep an eye out, Al. There are some sets you can buy from Amazon from time to time that are like £30 or £40 for a set of Winsor & Newtons. And every time I've been clicking on the link to find it, they've always sold out. But it's worth keeping an eye out for certain brands if you know they're good. But what I would say is get used to a brand that's easily obtainable. So if you ever need to replace them, you don't need to keep bargain hunting. I think that will work good. And that's why, for me, it's the GW brushes, because there's a store in town, and Broken Toad would be the next one that I would go to, just because I know they're quality brushes. They're a reliable company, and they've always done a good job. And Stewie's back to it. That's it, Stewie. You have a good drink. Those two for me are my favourites. I think if I had the money to throw at Winsor & Newtons, I would do it. But I feel like if I've got the money, I'd spend it on other stuff rather than Winsor & Newtons. So Broken Toad and GW for me. Sleepy Tiger, are the paper ones not super absorbent? Kitchen towels are quite absorbent for the wet palette, but they worked fine. I've used the kitchen towels for a long time, and they were fine. If you can switch out to these sponges, they work better. Check out December's acid drop review. And I think Andy's sending me another one of the acid drop boxes soon, the one with the models in it potentially for this month's. I don't know if he is or not. It might turn up and I'll do a review on it. Felhate opaque. Vibrant, I would say I was going for with Scale 75. There was another word, but very vibrant and rich in pigment. There we go. Paul Collier used Scale 75 on my Wolves airbrushed, really easy to use. Yeah, and your Wolves came out really nice, Paul. You did a really cracking job on those. Army Painter washers are best part of that range, and Paul saying the same. Army Painter washers, excellent. I did do a video on the Army Painter washers. They sent me a box and I found they were quite good. I've not used them much since, but I might be using them on the gauze, just to test them out again. 404 errors. They're just not linking for some reason. Moggy's Miniatures here. Welcome, Moggy. And I know Moggy's one who swears by the Broken Toad brushes as well. And if you haven't seen Moggy's work, check out his YouTube channel. He's on our Facebook group, and he's basically the king of the custodians. So, if you ever want custodians painted by somebody, there's nobody else in my mind who does them better than Moggy. He is king of custodians. Slippy Tiger, charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. That's a good set of traits. Slippy Tiger. Is there a reason my message keeps not showing? I don't know. I'm not in control of... I don't delete anything, and it shouldn't block anything. I don't... Even offensive stuff generally pops up. If there's something offensive, it might block it. But it shouldn't keep blocking. I mean, I've read most of your stuff, if not all of your stuff, Dunny, so it should pop up. Revel brushes are really nice. I've never tried them. And that's the thing. I think you've just got to keep trying different stuff. I think one thing as well is, there's a lot of people who say that the craft paints work well for models. And I know, what's his name? There's a really good, James Weppel, I think his name is. And I think his blog's Wepelius or something in America. And he's an insanely good painter. And that guy paints with cheap brushes, cheap paints, and he does incredible work with them. But I think that's that it's very rare that he does very, very well with them, but I wouldn't be able to do the same stuff. Whereas if I had better equipment, I can suddenly paint better. And I'm not saying you will paint better just because of the equipment, but it definitely helps. And I've tried things like the craft paints. We went to this craft shop in Leamington and I bought a big bunch of them. And they were rubbish. For scenery, they would work. When you want cheap paints just to do a large area very quickly and on the cheap. But in terms of model painting, I would never buy craft paints for it. GW paints are cheap enough and last long enough that they're fine. Vallejo's cheaper and they're good enough. I would never stoop down to the craft paints personally because I can't paint with them. And maybe that's me not using them right. But the pigment in them is so small and doesn't go very far that they're just not very good for me. Achaya, I would warn before looking at Moggy's work. He is too talented, his work is awesome, and if you want to get inspired and full of hate at the same time. Yes, but he does an amazing... It's golds and blacks from the stuff that Moggy does for me. That's why he's really good at custodians. His black and golds just come out amazing, and he's done so many of them that he's become an expert at both of those two colours. And obviously reds and all the other colours that he does, but black and gold is Moggy's trademark. If you can look through Facebook a lot of times and you can pick out certain people's work based on how they paint. And I start doing it now as a game now. I look on Facebook in the mornings or whatever, and I look down, I go down the list and see what pops up. And I don't look at the names, I look at the painted work and I try and guess who's painted it. And I'm getting it right most times now. I'm like, yeah, that's his work, that's his work, that's her work. Shoshi's Miniatures. She's a Twitch streamer. I think she's just got her partnership deal with Twitch. And she paints a lot of Kingdom Death miniatures. And her painting's very distinct. The style is different to a lot of other people's. And as soon as one of her models comes up, I'm like, yeah, that's one of Shoshi's. And you can see it straight away. And Moggy is the same, it's always the same, and the photography is the same as well. It's very good, high quality. It shows the model off in a good light, and it's very well done. So, yeah, credit where credit's due. Anyone know any cheap Lamian mediums alternatives? I love the stuff, use it regularly. I was talking to Ralph about this, and he and me both use the same sort of thing. I think he's got a different mix, but I use Liquitex. There's a Flow Improver, I think it's a flow something, and I mix that with their matte medium. So there's one that makes the flow better and you can make washes out of it, and there's one that gives it a nice matte medium, a matte finish on it. And I do probably a 20% matte medium with 80% of this flow stuff, and I mix that into a pot, and then I use that. It's here, Flow Aid. So there's Flow Aid and matte medium. You can see I've got that there. So I haven't got a mixed pot at the minute, but I'll just put a little dollop of the Flow Aid on the palette. I'll put a little dollop of that stuff. Maybe even 50-50 will work fine. And then mix that with a paint. Don't just mix it all in straight away, but you'll get used to the consistency, same as you do with medium. But the Liquitex Flow Aid and matte medium, those two combined are a good alternative to Lamian medium, and it's very cheap. Like I bought, I think it was a litre bottle of the matte medium for something like 10 or 12 pounds, and a litre goes a long way. I'm never going to need to buy any more matte medium in my life, I don't think. The Flow Aid I use a bit more of, but again it's vastly cheaper than Lamian medium, so I would recommend picking up those from Liquitex. And I know Winsor & Newton have got a same sort of thing, so Winsor & Newton or Liquitex will do the same job. Right. Moggy saying little cheers, guys. Slippy Tiger, anyone know? Yeah, I've done that. At Achaya, Windsor Newton, Liquitex Medium, and Slow Improve. Yeah, there we go, Flow Improver. There you go, sorted. Right, I have just got a text from Rachel saying that tea is ready in 5 minutes. So I've gone a little bit longer than an hour, but I don't mind because I was dragging it and I didn't really talk about the topic until the end of the show. There's 37 of you now, so I appreciate everyone who's turned up to the show and has been joining in with the chat. If you haven't, thank you just for turning up and listening to me babble on for over an hour. Phil will most likely have his Monday show this Monday Musing, and I think potentially we're going to get a Wednesday show. If I'm not on it, at least Phil will probably be doing it. There is, I think Spud may be on. I'm not sure if he's available on Wednesday, but I know he wanted to come on. It's just down to what Phil's doing, but maybe Wednesday as well as Monday will be done. And if not, I'll see you next Saturday. So thank you to everybody who's joined me. I need to get ready with the credits. Oh, there we go. Sam is lying. What's that? Sam is lying to you. His Lamian medium is made from his own sweat and tears. Tears and sweat. Perfect. Please like and subscribe for all your. Thanks for all your support. Achaya is good. He's a good egg. Achaya is. Right, I'm going to see you all next week. Have a fantastic weekend and have a really good week. And keep up your hobby progress, whether that's painting or trashing people in the game and collecting skulls from your enemies. Whatever it is, enjoy your hobby. And I'll see you next Saturday.